Happy Thanksgiving, guys! I would like to welcome you to the first ever vegan Chinese Thanksgiving. We are going to be the coolest cats in town because I guarantee you nobody is going to be doing what we're doing today. So I thought what would be really cool is if I prepared Thanksgiving meal with you guys so that, I mean, you could easily have me in the background. I'm gonna obviously edit this a little bit so that it's not gonna take 5 to 6 hours, but I'm gonna do the whole Thanksgiving meal plan with you guys today. I'm gonna cook with you. I have my computer right here with all of the recipes ready to go. So I think that this is gonna be really, really fun. Okay, so the 5 Chinese Thanksgiving courses that I have planned for you guys. I mean, Chinese Thanksgiving is not a real thing, but I happen to find some Chinese dishes that I think are very similar, or it can be kind of applied and turned into a Thanksgiving meal. So number 1 of what I have on the list, instead of biscuits, I have these super gorgeous scallion buns, and I've made them before, but this time we're going to put a little twist on them, literally, and they look like gorgeous florets that I think anybody would be happy to eat during Thanksgiving. So our second dish is actually going to be a 5-spice seitan scallion bao bread stuffing. So I thought instead of using, your traditional cornbread, we could use those baos that we have steamed up earlier, make a couple of extras, and then use that instead. So it's going to be a whole new texture, and there's going to be bits of that 5-spice seitan that I love so much dispersed all over. Now, our third and main course recipe, which we're actually going to be doing first, is going to be a Sichuan chili maple glazed ham, and I'm going to decorate it with some pineapples and some cherries, so it's going to look absolutely gorgeous, and the recipe is so, so delicious. My fourth dish is actually a play off of the green bean casserole, and it's actually a Sichuan green bean dish as well that is stir-fried with garlic and chilies, and this is definitely a dish where you might want to substitute your typical green bean casserole just to get a little bit of variety in Thanksgiving. My last dish, and of course you have to end with dessert, is a ginger milk bread pudding. Now, ginger milk pudding is a type of, it's a very traditional Chinese dessert where you put actually dairy milk along with some ginger, and the ginger helps the milk coagulate already, so you end up with the softest pudding. But how I'm going to apply it today is to just turn the whole thing into bread pudding, so you're just going to get a little bit of zing and a little bit of warming spices onto your bread pudding, and it is going to be an amazing last dish. So yeah, let's get started first on the ham, because that is the one that's going to take the longest. It needs to steam for an hour, and then it needs to bake in the oven for some time. Let me go to the game plan, and I will show you guys the game plan as well. We're going to do the ham first because that is what is going to take the most time. Let's say that you start Thanksgiving planning at, let's say it's 7 a.m. right now, okay? So we're gonna start off with the ham, and basically there's just a lot of flavorings. I'm gonna dump everything together, and then I am going to give it a good knead, and we'll head right back here afterward. Okay, so as with any seitan recipe, I'm going to mix my wet ingredients first and then my dry. So recipes are going to be down below, but I had 2 teaspoons of Lee Kum Kee's Double Deluxe soy sauce along with some liquid smoke that I've added to a really nice kind of vegan pork broth. And now if you don't really have that, you can choose to use a vegetable broth, and then also some food coloring. Now this is more kind of for the thumbnails and for the picture, so if you're not comfortable with it, feel free to just omit this step, but just blend all of that together before adding in right around 1 cup of silken tofu that you have pureed.
Now onwards to the dry ingredients. I have 1.5 cups of vital wheat gluten that I have mixed with a teaspoon of onion powder, some garlic powder, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to taste.
So now that you've got it to this, it is simply a mixing game. And in terms of the texture that you want, if you want a piece of ham that is more firm, that is more kind of like meaty that you can pull on it, you're gonna want to work this gluten for a longer amount of time. Now, if you want something like bologna or kind of like luncheon meats that's a little bit easier to bite into, then you work it less. So either way, we're gonna have to get our hands a little bit dirty. Okay, so afterwards you get this. It's not overly attractive, but whatever. And then what you want to do is, because seitan does kind of expand in the oven a bit, you want to put it cheesecloth. This cheesecloth will definitely turn pink, unfortunately. Be a sacrifice for Thanksgiving. You want to wrap this up pretty tightly, and it'll expand still a little bit, but you'll end up with kind of like a firmer being afterwards. You want to wrap this up in some tin foil, and then you want to put it into the steamer to steam for an hour. After an hour, we're gonna stick it into the oven. We're gonna put some of that glaze on it to get a nice crust on the ham, and then it's ready to go.
So in a steamer, this guy goes, and you steam it for right around 1 hour until it gets nice and firm. And in the meanwhile, let's prepare some of that yummy glaze. So I have 2 tablespoons of sweet maple syrup, and to that I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of the chili oil, and I'll put that link down below. But if you guys haven't tried this one before, you know how I feel about spices. I absolutely love this one. And because the glaze does have a tendency to be on the sweeter side, I like to add 1 tablespoon of, again, that double deluxe soy sauce just to balance out everything. Okay guys, I promise you that this will look a lot better after the glaze. I promise. So what we're gonna do now is to just cut diagonals into this chunk. And what will happen is, as it bakes, it will open up and mimic the look of ham. And I actually saw that, I think it was Sarah's Vegan Kitchen, she put little bits of clove in it so that it would mimic real ham. So you guys can do that as well. And what I'm doing is I'm putting 1 layer of that chili oil on right now before putting it into the oven at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. And in between that time, I'm gonna be glazing this ham for 3 or 4 more times just to get a nice thick and shiny layer on that. Okay, so moving on to the scallion buns. You guys have seen me do this before, and we want to double this recipe because some of it is going to be for the stuffing. So for 6 buns though, it's 2 cups of flour. I have 2/3 of a teaspoon of yeast, some water, some salt, and some sugar. You guys have seen this again before, and just blend it all together and knead it for a couple of minutes until it becomes a smooth ball, and then let it rest for right about an hour until it doubles in size. So I jumped a little bit ahead there. After the rest, you want to just turn it out onto a table and knead it for a couple of minutes before rolling it out into about 1/8 of an inch thick. And I would say this is about a 10 by 12 inch rectangle. And what I have here is right around a half a cup of scallions that I've chopped up and just salted a little bit. What I'm gonna do is fold this into 4 layers and then cut it into 6 equal pieces. So there are many ways to make these florets, and this was one of the easiest methods that I've found. So you take a chopstick, you kind of essentially break it in half, and you stretch out the dough and twist it 2 times. And afterwards you sort of just join the ends. And it's one of those things where I don't think that you can make too many mistakes, because kind of like the more twisted it is, the prettier it looks. So it's not going to be a big deal if, something goes wrong. These go into a preheated steamer and you're going to steam them for 12 minutes. Now, the trick about this is you might want to just keep it in the steamer on low heat, or steam it right before you're about to serve your guests and they become nice and soft again. But they do need to be warmed and they do need to be steamed.
Okay, so now time for the stuffing, and I really like this recipe because I think it's super creative. I'm going to basically marinate some of the seitan first with just some like teriyaki sauce and sesame oil, but I also have the bao bread as well. And to be honest, I actually made these guys a couple of days ahead of time, and then I put them in the freezer so that I wouldn't have to worry about, don't need to roll out dough, and everything will be prepared. And when these guys re-steam, it's really just as good. So I'm just gonna re-steam these, and then afterwards put everything together, bake it up all nice, and it turns into the most yummy stuffing. And the texture is just a tad different because we are using these Chinese bao breads instead of normal bread. So super excited.
So I started by cutting about 200 grams of seitan into fairly thin slices, but you can cut them into, little bits or chunks if you want to. And then I marinated it in a really easy sauce. So I started with a little bit of 5 spice, and I just mixed that with some Lee Kum Kee sesame oil, some of their garlic, and then also a little bit of their hoisin sauce as well, just to have a little bit of sweetness to balance out the savoriness from the garlic. I'm gonna just mix all of that together and set it aside for right around 15 minutes. Are you guys tired yet? Just take a break from watching the video and then and then come back to it. So I have a little bit of oil in the pan, and I'm just going to cook some celery along with some leeks just until they soften up. So 4 or 5 minutes on medium to medium high heat, just until they soften. Afterwards, I'm gonna add some thyme, some salt, and some pepper. Once you throw the seitan in, just mix everything around, turn the heat off, and this portion of the stuffing is ready to go. So now we're gonna prepare the bread part of our stuffing. I took 5 of those bao breads that we made earlier. So these are extra pieces. They are still steaming. And you just wanna cut them into, semi-big chunks. And I would leave these aside for, 10 to 15 minutes just until they are not as wet before you add them to the mixture. I love putting cranberries into savory things. Like you'll see me do that throughout this holiday season. So that was a 1/4 cup of fresh cranberries, and I really like the tang, but if you guys want, you can use the sweetened dry version. And then this is 1 cup of vegetable broth that I used 2 times the amount of bouillon cubes for, if that makes sense. And then I added 2 tablespoons of chickpea flour, which is going to act as a thickener and kind of your substitute for egg. So once the liquid is in, you should let the bao kind of rest for like 15 minutes so that it can soak up all of that liquid. I know that it looks like a lot, but once it bakes up, it's going to thicken up and everything will make sense. So this goes into the oven, 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 minutes with the foil, and then last 10 minutes, take off the foil so that it gets nice and golden brown like this. Like how gorgeous does that look with the twirls from the rose bun? And let me tell you, the taste is out of this world.
Okay, so now it's time for the bread pudding, and this is a nice one to do in between, or it's also a good one to do a day ahead of time because it's always nice that the bread soaks a little bit longer into that custardy filling before you bake it. So if you're going to be doing this early, put it into the refrigerator, and then right as maybe the meal starts, you can put this guy into the oven, and then that way when people finish eating, this will be just kind of, nice and fresh out of the oven when you make it. So my big tips for this is basically to use fresh ginger. So get this, grind it up, squeeze it out, and make sure that you have nice fresh ginger juice. And then also day-old bread. So if you don't have that, obviously just leave your bread out so that it dries up a little bit. I happened to pick this one up from the grocery store, and it was a reduced price because it had been the day-old bread. So which works really well for this. You get to save some money, and then as well as have, better bread for your bread pudding.
So yeah, like I said, start off with some day-old bread, and I'm putting in, I'd say right around 3 to 4 cups here, and I love like ripped rustic bread pudding, so I don't like to cut it into chunks, but if that's your jam, feel free to do that. And I'm gonna put in 3 tablespoons of fresh ginger juice. I love ginger, so this really depends on you. And then to that, I'm gonna add a 1/2 cup of sugar along with 2 tablespoons of custard powder to function a little bit like egg, along with some non-dairy milk, some vanilla, and then some black salt just to add that kind of custardy, eggy taste back into this bread pudding. So make sure you push that bread in there all nice and good so that it will absorb all of that custardy mix, and then you're good to go.
Okay, so I'm just going to put this into the refrigerator right now, and then once you start serving the meals, you can put this into a 325-degree oven for right around 45 to 50 minutes. And once everybody is done eating, this guy will be ready to go. Okay, so now time for the green beans dish, and this is the one where I recommend you do it the day of and just right before you're about to serve dinner because it cooks up fairly quickly. And this dish is cool because what we're gonna do is stick these beans into the broiler with a little bit of oil so that it gets kind of nice and blistery, it's kind of crunchy and gives it just a little bit of a different texture. And then of course we're gonna mix it with some Sichuan peppercorns and some dried chilies at the end, so it's going to be really, really yummy.
I start off by mixing 1 pound of string beans that I've cut off the ends to with a little bit of avocado oil, some salt, and some pepper. And I'm just going to stick it under the broiler for, like 6 to 8 minutes, depending on how strong your broiler is. And you want these guys to be nice and charred and blistered. So I'm just putting in a couple tablespoons of vegetable oil over medium to medium high heat, and then putting in that Lee Kum Kee minced garlic and minced ginger on the side because they do have a little bit of liquid to them, so I don't want them to splatter too much. That was some Sichuan peppercorns along with these dried hot chilies. So this all happens really quickly, and just toast them for like 2 or 3 minutes before throwing in all of your beans. Oh geez, did I tell you that I threw in 2 tablespoons of dried shallots in there just to kind of mimic that green bean casserole feel, and then just a dash of sugar at the end brings this dish together, and it is so good because of the texture of those blistered beans. If you guys haven't tried it before, you have to.
Okay, so like I said, once your savory meals are all done and you guys are about to head over to the table and eat, this is when you want to take out your bread pudding from the fridge. Now we're gonna stick it into the oven so that after everybody is done eating, this will be nice and warm and ready to go. You can serve it with some ice cream. It'll be absolutely delicious. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed spending that first Chinese Thanksgiving with me. I hope you found the recipes to be really creative, and maybe you'll try to make 1 or 2 of them for yourselves, definitely during the holiday season. And I'm just looking at the ham right now, and I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, and I love the bao stuffing. It's one of my favorites. So I hope you guys enjoy it as well. And as usual, if you have any questions, definitely put them down in the comments below. I will try my best to answer them before Thanksgiving or before the holidays when you guys make them, okay? So a big happy Thanksgiving from me, and then happy holidays as well, and I will see you guys again soon, okay? Bye.